I am setting everything up to go live. Y'all bear with me just a moment so I can double check that it's actually up and running. There we go. Just a moment. It is working. Okay, it's working. So welcome to the Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast. I am Coach Donna Marie. I'm the host of Plant Your Seeds of Transformation, and I'm also a spiritual leadership coach. I am a certified trained coach, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to bring you our guest today. Deya, would you please introduce yourself to our audience and let them know more about you?
My pleasure, Donna. Hi, everyone. My name is Deya. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a B2B writer and fiction writer based out of the Bay Area in California. I've been writing professionally for 5 years after an unsuccessful stint at corporate. And over the last year, especially owing to certain personal experiences that I went through, I have been thinking very deeply about mental health and how it relates to the broader life as a creator and a businesswoman. That's something I've been very passionately writing about on Medium, and something that I plan to maybe take to a broader audience later on someday. So creativity and mental health and the link between those is something that I'm constantly thinking about, trying to relate it to my experiences and special experiences of other women of color. And I'm so glad to be here to share and learn from Coach Donna Marie. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. And those of you who want to check out Deya's excellent writing, she's at Deya BH93 at medium.com, and you'll see that under her name here. Thank you all for tuning in if you're here with us live or if you're coming to us from the future. And again, Deya, thank you very much for being willing to join me and share your insights. We have a show page at PlantYourSeeds.show for every episode. The lives will be uploaded later. So please check out PlantYourSeeds.show later today or early tomorrow to see the show notes with all of Deya's information, as well as any other information about the show. For instance, this show is produced by Lead Like a Queen Coaching and Consulting, LLC. That is my company. We are producing the show. If anyone would like to donate to the show, we'd love to receive your help so we can continue improving it, continue bringing on great guests like Deya, and be able to continue to grow the audience and make sure that it's getting into the hands of primarily the hands of women of color, women who are maybe working, maybe building businesses, maybe in school, going after their goals, but they have to deal with some contingencies that other people may not have to deal with. And we talk about these things here. As a woman who is a Black American, I have spoken a lot to the cultural things that I've seen that run through my family, my community, in terms of how Black women leaders are dealing with or not dealing with their trauma and how it's impacting how they're living their lives, or whether or not they even bother trying to go after their goals. And I just want to encourage all of you who are listening in, just because you're dealing with some hard things doesn't mean you have to give up on your dreams. But you have to do things differently, or else you will not be able to pursue your dreams. You can't do it like everybody else is doing it. And the reason why I invited Deya here is because she has really great insights on these things. I'll tell y'all where I first met Deya. Deya was part of Medium's conference. They did a writing conference. It was called Medium Day. Those of you who are familiar with the Medium app or the medium.com website, you know that this is a place to read articles by excellent writers like Deya, like me. I'm there too. And they did a conference that was just fantastic. And Deya's session just stood out to me. The title of it was Creativity and Mental Health, How to Respect Your Needs, Ignore the Hustle Culture Bros, and Build a Creator Journey that Fulfills You. That spoke volumes to me just from that title. And I clicked and I had to listen. And afterwards, I was like, Deya, you've got to join us. You've got to join us because we talk about these kinds of things. And so I wanted to give Deya the chance to share some of her insights with this audience because I know that she's brilliant. And I know that you'll be very blessed to hear what she has to say. So let me go ahead and dig in. Let's dig in. So Deya was, we connected through Medium, we connected through LinkedIn, and we have been able to kind of flesh out what we're going to discuss today. And one of the main things that we've discussed in the past that we definitely had to touch on, we always touch on it, is what is perfectionism? Why is it toxic and unhealthy, especially for people who have been recovering from trauma and or people who may have some type of special needs that they need to get, they have some type of chronic thing going on that they always need to get additional support and help from so that they can live and enjoy their lives. Why is perfectionism not good for them? So this is the type of thing we're going to talk about today. So Deya, what are your thoughts about perfectionism? Have you ever written about that? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, perfectionism growing up used to be this title I always aspired for. Right from getting perfect grades on all my school tests to getting into the perfect college, into the perfect job, getting the perfect salary. I come from a family actually that culturally values perfectionism a lot. Perfectionism in terms of, the grades and how much money you're making, what kind of car you're buying, those external things matter a lot. And while I do recognize that it is obviously good to have good grades and a good job, and there's nothing wrong with that. When it gets tied to unhealthy expectations about what you can tell society, oh, this is what I'm doing, and this is good versus this is bad, that's where the problem lies. And most of my adult life, I've continued to juggle with this issue of perfectionism because I've gone through several changes in my career, and I don't necessarily make the kind of money that would be deemed perfect in my culture or in my family. And for a long time, that hurt. For a long time, I would beat myself up because I felt like I was disappointing my family. I was disappointing my society because I wasn't doing that kind of thing. It's only recently in the last year or so that I've been really thinking about broader things like, maybe are there other definitions of perfectionism? Maybe is it necessary to always have to live up to these high standards? Maybe are there ways to be perfect with maybe, the so-called imperfections of my experiences and my mental health needs and my trauma needs and those other things that people often don't like to talk about? Is there a way to build a perfect life around that?
Oh my goodness. It sounds like you've been very introspective to think not just about your culture, but about your own needs. Mm-hmm. Has that been what's been the driver for you with your shift in your career and pursuing writing professionally?
Absolutely. Donna, it's very interesting, and I'm sure this is something that a lot of us can relate to, is that many of us grew up in families and were taught that, you shouldn't always be thinking about yourself. You need to think about other people, and I think women especially are taught to don't think so much about yourself, be giving, be kind, be generous, be thoughtful. And again, those are all in isolation good values to have. I'm not at all advocating being a selfish person, but at some point you need to think, how much of myself am I giving to other people and to other things that may not necessarily serve me? At what point do I need to stop doing that and maybe think about what's good for me and to give myself that space? And that's not selfish. That is just, that's doing the right thing, really, and that's something I've been trying very hard to do, especially, 5 years ago, I quit my job and I went into freelancing because I realized that was something I needed to do for myself. Over the last year, I've been focusing more on, we talked about it on Medium Day, balancing creativity with my mental health needs, because that was something I had to do for myself. I was done chasing these false metrics of working X number of hours a day and getting 100 things done a day, being a boss woman, all of that stuff. I was done with chasing those things. I had to stop and tell myself, this is my brain. These are my needs. This is what excites me. And this is what exhausts me. I need to maintain that balance, because if I don't, no one's going to do it for me.
Yeah, that is a great point. If you don't take care of you, all those other people who may or may not be leaning on you to take care of them, they're not going to do it.
Oh, no.
So it won't be done. And you can give from an empty well. And at the end of the day, it can literally kill you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So what, if you want to share, you're welcome to, what was the rock bottom for you in terms of making sure that you finally decided to start standing up for your own needs?
Sure. Well, something happened last year, which I would prefer not to talk about, but that was actually what motivated me to go into therapy for the first time last year. And that was also a big mental step, because I come from India, and in India, therapy is a dirty word. You don't go to therapy. You're not supposed to even think about it or talk about it. You're supposed to suck up all your problems and keep them to yourself.
In
so
the African-American community, it's very similar. You have to be strong at all times.
Oh, yes.
Strong Black women.
Yes.
Can't show any weakness. Don't cry in front of anybody. All of that.
Oh, yeah. It's very much there in India too. You just have to be the strong woman who holds the family together. You are not allowed to fall. So all of that was there. And but I finally went to therapy, and that was where actually my therapist diagnosed me with PTSD. And I never even realized that what I was going through could even qualify as trauma, because I'd been so conditioned to think about, oh, it's just daily problems. Suck it up, suck it up, suck it up. And that was, I would say, my rock bottom, because I realized that I had been pressuring myself so hard. I'd been driving myself for so long to be this strong woman who has everything put together. And I just couldn't. I really couldn't. And I would say that happened in September of last year. And that was when I actually first started actively writing on Medium, because writing has always been my outlet for processing all of my emotions. And I started small, and then I realized that this is something that gave me joy. This is something that other people were responding well to. And ever since, I've been trying as much as I can to just keep sharing mental health insights, lifestyle insights from the perspective of someone who has different needs. And it's been very fulfilling so far. And yeah.
What was it about writing that was helpful for you?
Really, it's just, I've always been a writer, actually. Since I was 5, I've been writing all kinds of things, poetry, short fiction, essays, things like that. And writing has always felt like home. I think that's the only way I can say it. I throughout a fairly tough childhood and early adulthood, writing was always my outlet. So I would say it just comes naturally to me. And especially I do want to mention that I've heard you talk, especially I was listening to your episode on resilience about journaling and about pen and paper, and I do feel like there's something very healing about holding a pen in your hand and watching the ink flow out onto the page. In a way, it's like that ink represents all the feelings that you're just letting out, be they good or be they bad, the things that you've bottled up. It's a release of sort. And writing has always been the most automatic form of release for me.
So it's cathartic for you.
Very much so.
When you decided to be a presenter for the Medium Day conference, why did you decide to do that? What was the motivating force for you with that?
I actually didn't even realize that I was eligible to present on my Medium Day. It was actually an email that I got. So I think, so how it worked was when they invited certain people who'd been active on Medium. And so I got the email, and for the longest time, I was like, okay, you know what, what's the point? I've never spoken in public before. What am I going to do? But then I thought about, what I'd been writing about, and I realized this was something that matters very much to me. And I knew that on Medium Day, there would be a lot of the very writers, the hustle culture writers talking about their side of things. And that's usually the case in these conferences. I feel you have these people with like 80, 90, 100,000 followers who are talking about be productive, do this, do that. And sure, that's their space. That's what they do. I respect that. But I felt I really truly felt that there should be a voice who's also speaking from the other side, maybe, and just, because otherwise, what's the point of a conference if you don't have diverse voices? So I sent in my application and they accepted it. I was very happy. And and because I believe they didn't accept everybody's, the session idea. So I was very glad that I was there. And all things considered, I think we had a fairly good turnout that day, considering I'm a relatively small speaker and a small presence online. And I was very grateful that I had this opportunity, and I did overcome some of my nervousness about speaking in public. So that's also a plus.
You did a fantastic job. I would never have known that was
so much.
Your first, did you say that was your first public speaking?
Yes, it was my first time ever hosting a session. Yeah.
So I would never have known. It was fantastic. Your insights into this topic are amazing and very helpful. You saw how many people showed up. I don't remember. Do you remember how many people showed up for that session?
I think by the time it ended, we were at about 35 or so. I think maybe a few people might have dropped out in the middle. I'm not sure. But yeah, around 34, 35.
People need to hear these things. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm sticking to this podcast. It's not about, for me, it's not about how many people are listening or watching. It's about who is listening or watching. Mm-hmm. Are they getting what they need? And so thank you, because I got some things out of that I needed. I am very much committed to my writing, but I have not been able to just plug in. Many of the people who write advice articles on Medium about how to grow your medium, they tell you write every day, post a new article every day. There is no way that I'm going to be able to post a new article every day.
I can do that. Yeah.
Not at this stage in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So listening to you was just super encouraging. Listening to you, and there were also some other people too that kind of hit the same general trend. When you're dealing with mental health, you have to flow whatever way you need to flow. You cannot judge yourself based on somebody else's standards. That comparison thing is a total trap. And that's also, that plays into perfectionism. When you're trying to compare yourself to other people, you are creating an unrealistic expectation for yourself that you will never be able to meet up to. And it can actually cause self-hatred.
Absolutely.
And I've talked about this. I've talked about in the African-American community, nobody talks about suicide. There are young Black women who are at the top of their game killing themselves. There were 2 Black beauty queens during COVID that killed themselves, jumped off of balconies. They were like the top of their beauty pageant stuff. And we don't talk about it. But as a matter of fact, one of them, they were like, no, she just fell. She did not fall. She did not just fall. And the longer we ignore these things, the worse it gets for our community, for these young people who need us to take the pressure off and give them permission to just be themselves, to take a break if they need a break. Being a high achiever is great. I've always been a high achiever. Graduated as an honors graduate student when I was finishing up my graduate degree a couple of years ago. In high school, always honors. Went to school on a full 4-year scholarship for my undergrad, all of that. I've always been a high achiever, but I've always been very unhealthy in terms of how I did those achievements, just driving myself, not sleeping, not eating properly, not drinking enough water, all of that when I was younger. And I came to a place where I had to make a decision that I love myself.
Yes.
That was the most important realization I came to. I love me some me. There was a time where I could not say that.
Yeah.
Because my comparison of myself as an older person to how I was when I was younger was sorely lacking. So even comparing yourself in current version to who you used to be when you were 20 years old, that's also extremely unhealthy too, because that's unrealistic. You cannot turn back the clock.
Of course.
Even if you lose the weight, which many people, that's the main thing they want, is to be skinnier.
Mhm.
Even if you lose the weight, you will never be that person again.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so many times we are just so caught up in these unrealistic standards that we either create for ourselves, or our family, or one of our parents creates for us,
Mm-hmm.
or the society around us. I will never be a young white girl with blonde hair that looks like Barbie. I've never been that. That will never be me. That would definitely be qualified as an unrealistic standard, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you live in a society where that is the standard, that automatically causes the type of trauma. It's a cultural trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people in this world who are out here writing and speaking like Deya, like me, to help encourage you to love you as you are. There's no reason for you not to. You are who you are. And all of your uniqueness is an asset, not a problem. It's not a problem. There's no diagnosis that needs to be given. There's no prescription for something else. Accept yourself. Love yourself. This is something that you need to tell yourself, that you love yourself. Because if you don't love you, honest truth is, if you don't love you, it even makes it worse as you're interacting with like new people, for instance, and not just new people, existing people in your life, as well as new people. People can sense that lack of confidence, lack of self-love. And unfortunately, there are those who will feed off of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can relate
And
to
they'll
that so
prey
hard.
on that. They'll prey on that, and they'll sell you things you don't need to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. They'll get you into these webinars and, free webinars to sell you things, to fix things that you think are lacking, which may not really be lacking. They'll sell you systems and processes that don't work for you. So let's say, for instance, Dale was talking about how there are writers and speakers who will talk about how to build your writing career. And they do it in their own way. Let me give you an example. A lot of times you'll see people with t-shirts on or hats on that say sleep is overrated.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That is so unhealthy. If you're listening to people that are giving you that kind of advice, you need to shut that off. Just turn it off, click the button, go to another video or another webinar somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Stop listening to these people who are giving you these horrible pieces of advice that are not relevant for your life. If you're a young 18-year-old guy with no children, you could probably do some of the stuff and be successful just as they've been. But if you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this podcast, most likely that's not who you are. And you have to understand yourself better. Now, Deya, you did mention the fact that you have been seeking therapy. Mm-hmm. And would you mind sharing some about how you came to that decision to go look for a therapist?
Sure, absolutely. I did. So I realized that what I was going through last year, I had nobody to talk to. It's not that I didn't have people who loved me and who supported me. I do, and I am very grateful for them, very much so. But unfortunately, in a way, they were the cause of the trauma that I was going through. And therefore, you obviously can't talk about your trauma to the person who is traumatizing you, even if they aren't doing it intentionally, even if they're coming from a place of love. And I think last year I was at a point, I was also in a different country, far away from my family and friends. And so I was also alone. So I mean, normally if I had my friends around, I would maybe talk to them, but they were all in different time zones. They were all in different places in their life. And I mean, it was really at a time where I'd never felt so alone. I'd absolutely never felt so alone. And I was writing, I was journaling, I was trying to process it through things like maybe hiking or going out of doors, exercise, all of that. But after a point, I realized I need something more. I need something deeper. I need to be able to talk to someone who won't just be a passive listener, but also an active listener, and who can maybe guide my thoughts into channels that might be more useful and healthy for me. And it's one of the best decisions I took, because through the therapy that I took, not only did I address the thing that was troubling me, but we went so far deep into aspects of my childhood that I'd been bottling up for so long. I found I was given tools to process my relationship with my family. And again, these are things that have been going on for decades. And once I had the tools to process that, I was also able to process my present trauma a whole lot better, because I was equipped with ways to think that served my needs, my specific needs, where I was coming from, and not just some generic deep, breathe deep of the internet, Yeah, I think we've all seen that, and we're all tired of that. You just look up, how to deal with it. You're like, oh, just take a deep breath, everything will be okay. If only it were that easy.
It has its place, but it's not
Yes.
enough.
Yes.
It's helpful to a point. But there's a point at which therapy, if you need it, if you are recovering from some type of trauma could be, I shared previously, trauma could be becoming a family caregiver to a loved one. That's traumatizing. That creates a huge life shift that affects several areas of your life. It can affect you financially, socially, definitely mentally, because many times people who are caregivers are also dealing with deep grief, especially if you're a caregiver for a very long time, for like decades. So people don't think about what trauma is. They don't understand that they are actually dealing with trauma. And because they don't understand it, they don't seek help for it. How did you get to the point where you recognized that you were actually dealing with trauma?
Well, for me, it was a complete shock, because that was what my therapist told me, because there was a point where she had to write up an official diagnosis for me to continue further treatment. And that's when she said, I think, you have PTSD. And I was shocked, because at that point, I thought PTSD was something that only happened to soldiers and war veterans. I had only ever come across that term in that context. I didn't know it could happen to civilians like me. I really didn't. And I come from a background, and I come from a history where, you just suppress things and you deal with them. I was so convinced that what I was going through was just, I was like, other people have it worse than me. Who am I to complain? I have a roof over my head. I have food, I have no one. I should just shut up and continue with my life. So it was a shock, but I will say that once I got that diagnosis, a lot of things fell into place for me, because I finally had a name for all of those things that were going through. I realized that what I was going through was valid, that it's not healthy to try and reduce what you're going through because you see that someone else might have it worse or better. That's not the right way to approach life.
It re-traumatizes you when you minimize.
Exactly. Yeah. Just because, there's no point in comparing yourself to whether someone else has it worse or better. Right now, this is where you are. This is what you're going through, and you need to respect that. You should not minimize that. You should not deny that. You should not try and justify it. You need to respect it.
And be compassionate to yourself about it. A lot of times people who have been raised in this hustle culture, or in a strong Black woman type of environment, or whatever cultural unrealistic expectation type of situation you may find yourself in. A lot of times people in those types of situations, they are taught and trained to think that that is weak. To get help is weak. And so when they realize they are struggling and they can't get out of it on their own, they start berating themselves inside. Talking about your internal dialogue tells a lot about where your head is at. If you're beating up on yourself and criticizing yourself and telling yourself, oh, you're just so weak, why can't you get over this? If you find yourself saying that, that's a sign that you do actually need the help of a professional therapist to help you deal with trauma. People deserve help, period. You deserve help, no matter who you are or what you're going through. You are worthy of getting help because you are a human being, and all of us have things that we need some help with sometimes. And the other thing I was going to talk about is this: the isolation and the loneliness. People also don't want to admit that they're lonely. This was like my first or second episode of the very first or second season of this podcast. I talked about this topic of loneliness. There are actually studies, research that's done to show that people don't want to admit they're lonely. It is a psychological mind trip for them, because when you tell somebody that you're lonely, they just assume that you're just weak. And so it kind of puts a target on a person's back. So they don't want to share that. Who wants to share that you're dealing with that, right? But not getting support when you are dealing with loneliness, that can also be very detrimental for you, because God did not make, I believe in Jesus and Father God. That's the religious tradition I come out of. But there are other spiritual or religious traditions that are similar. We are not meant to be alone all the time, right? Solitude has its place. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is wholly different. You can be lonely in the middle of a group of people, and it's okay to get help with that. And one of the things that I loved about the Medium conference is that it's bringing people together virtually from all over the world. And they did focus one specific section of that conference specifically on mental health. Mm-hmm. And Deya's was only one of the sessions on this topic. There were others. There was one from two people who were diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And they talked about their experiences as writers having to manage this chronic condition. And again, talked about that they can't work like the tech bros recommend, writing an article every day. They can't always do that. And it's okay to need to take a break. It's okay to need help. These things are okay. But if you don't get help, if you don't take a break, what are the consequences of that? Have you ever found yourself, Deya, in a situation where you were really pushing yourself? And what happened?
So many times over the course of I would say, especially my 20s, I found myself pushing myself. And I mean, I can summarize it by saying it always ended badly. I mean, I have fallen ill because of stress. I've had, I've fainted in like college and at work, had gone through stress related illnesses, just very heavy sleep problems, digestive issues, all of that. I definitely found myself becoming an angrier person because I had so many feelings inside me, and it just came out as anger and bitterness and lashing out at people around me, even though they weren't the ones at fault. It's just happened so many times. And unfortunately, for the longest time, and I mean, I guess, this is the kind of place where we're candid about these feelings. And I do admit that for the longest time, I wasn't able to see those cycles for myself. I just kept thinking, I did this. Okay, let me just do it differently the next time. But I was just pushing myself and pushing myself and pushing myself because I was so convinced that I had to have it all. I had to have the perfect job. I had to have the perfect body. I had to have the perfect relationship, I had the perfect friend circle, everything. But that's not realistic. It just really isn't. And people who tell you so, that they're lying. I mean, even the people who claim to have it all, I assure you, they do not. And the internet is the kind of place where, anybody can write anything and it can go viral. And, so, this is just something that I had to tell myself as well, that I was chasing false ideals, false morals, false standards. And now I'm at a place where I wouldn't say that I've come out of that, cycle of of toxic perfectionism yet. It's still very much a work in progress, but at least I now recognize that if I push myself beyond a point, it's going to end badly. So whenever I feel like I'm at a point where maybe I'm overdoing it, I stop, I take a step back and ask myself, all right, is it going to serve me to pursue this very goal right now? Will it maybe be better for me if I take a break or take a day off or just, get some sleep? And asking those questions, having those mental check-ins with myself definitely does help, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. Mental check-ins. And is that how writing kind of plays into that too? Do you use your journaling as a way to kind of check in with yourself?
I do. I will say I need to be a lot more regular with my daily journaling. I do definitely try to do it a few times a week, but I do want to do it more often for sure. And I mean, I was listening to your episode on resilience, Donna, and I love what you said that, a journal isn't just something you put on that looks nice on your bookshelf. You need to use it. If you've invested the time and the money to get a journal, you had better use it, because that's what it's for. It's a tool to help you. It's not an accessory. So I'm going to keep that in mind for sure. Yeah, writing has always been cathartic for me. It's always been my outlet. I know many people have others. It could be painting or knitting or cooking or even doing the household chores. My chosen is definitely writing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be transparent to say that I have a lot of pretty journals sitting on shelves, some of them totally unused. But what I have learned is this. For me, I've learned myself. I know that I love digital everything. It just makes my life simpler. So using my iPhone and my Apple Watch in tandem, I can write notes, i.e. journal, wherever I'm at, even in the shower. And so I talked about that on my Medium, actually on my blog and on my Medium, because I wanted people to think about this. It's not just about putting pen to paper. That is good. Do that. But if you're not going to do that, then do something else that's going to work. Sometimes people will answer questions. So professionals may answer questions along the lines of, how often, or what is the best kind of toothbrush to use? You'll ask your dentist, what's the best kind of toothbrush to use? Sometimes the answer that they'll give is something along the lines of, the best toothbrush is the one you're going to use. Same thing with journaling. The best journal, is the one that you're going to use. It is important for you to just find your flow, period. Find what works for you that you will consistently do, that you'll consistently go to. Try to make sure it's whatever you're using is organized, because what happens, like if you're using digital tools, if you're just throwing a whole bunch of notes in an app or in your phone or on your computer or whatever, if you can't find it when you want to review it, that's not helpful, right? So just make sure you learn how to use folders or tags or whatever organizational system is part of whatever it is that you're using, if it's a digital system. If it's a journal, paper journal, and you're writing about more than one topic, it's great to get different journals with different colors and actually use each one for a different thing and keep them in places you need them. Like you may have a small journal that's, this size, something you can stick in your pocket or your purse or whatever. You may have a journal like that. You may have another journal that's thicker that you're using to help you write a novel or something. So just keep things organized in a way that works for you so that you can find the information you need when you need it. If you're a writer, you want to be able to get back to those journals, to those notes, wherever you put them. You want to be able to get back to them. You need that. That's like gold. So I just wanted to encourage you guys in the audience, make sure that you think about these things. You need to take care of yourself. You need to make sure you have a way to get your thoughts out. If it's on paper or on video, not necessarily sharing the videos, just save the videos for yourself. Whatever way, you need to make sure you can get your thoughts out. If you are a trauma survivor, if you're recovering from some type of trauma, it's okay to get help. And if you need to you do need to keep reading and learning and listening and watching. So make sure that you're subscribed to Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast. Make sure you check out Deya's blog, DeyaBh93.medium.com. Make sure that you check out our show notes for this podcast at PlantYourSeeds.show. People need other people. And if it's just reading or watching or listening, that's fine too. But you can't just stay in isolation all the time and expect to have growth as a person, as a business person. If you're a writer, if you're a person who is aspiring to be a YouTuber, you need community. You need people. So sometimes for me, I'll just be honest, a lot of my community has expanded into the YouTube space. There are several different YouTube communities that I've become a part of, and they've become really important for me. They've become really helpful for me. Many of them have additional spaces outside of YouTube, like Discord or Facebook. It's okay to have help. You don't necessarily have to shout to the world that you're recovering from trauma, but it's okay to seek help. So I just want to definitely encourage everybody, make sure that you are plugging in with people that are supportive and not judgmental, be it through listening or watching or even in person, okay? If you have access to local resources that can be supportive for you in the way that you need, definitely tap into those. I know me, coming out of the pandemic, I'm not gonna lie, I really don't like going in person to a lot of things. So it's hard for me, like I will cancel stuff if I just don't feel, if there's something in me that's saying, you don't need to go to that, I will not go. I'll cancel in a heartbeat. But if there's something that's supportive, like they have in our community, they have this private library, Carnegie, it's called Carnegie. Apparently Carnegie Mellon, or not Mellon, the foundation for Carnegie, the guy, the famous rich guy from back in the day, apparently he gave money to small towns to start these libraries. So there's one here where I live in Noonan, Georgia, Carnegie, and they actually have arts and crafts type things. Like my daughter was able to plug into a pottery class that they did. You know, things like that that are free or cheap, like $2. You can plug in with things like that without feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes, you know, those small get-togethers, workshops or whatever, those things can help you. A writing workshop. Deya, are you aware, how did you get involved in writing? Are you aware of anything to help people get started with writing, or do you have something?
Well, I actually haven't. I mean, I don't really do writing workshops per se. I came to writing just by reading a lot, and I do kind of tend to work in isolation. I am trying to maybe build more of a community. For writers, I would definitely say the best thing is to read. And one way I will suggest a good way, which it can be a hit or a miss, is maybe if you're writing in public spaces like libraries or coffee shops, if you feel brave enough to take your journal or your laptop out there, that can be a great way to meet other writers and other people who are interested in words. I've certainly had some very interesting conversations and made some good friends that way. So definitely try that out.
Yeah, coffee shops can be a great way to meet people, and libraries sometimes, it just depends.
Yeah, that's
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Deya, do you have anything coming up that you'd like to share? Do you have a specific article that you'd like for people to read?
Sure. So I have a few things scheduled to go out this week. There is going to be one piece where I talk very candidly about my journey with burnout and PTSD. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. And I'll also be detailing some changes that I'll be implementing over the next 3 months, because I have been, again, thinking about my needs, and I will be making some very critical changes to the way I work and to my business model. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. And just please do follow me on Medium, because I'm very, very passionate about helping people with mental health struggles, and especially people of color, women of color, immigrant women deal with those things, and giving them some of the language to deal with those things, because that's something we're culturally taught to not even think about or recognize. So yeah, as someone with ADHD, I don't have a schedule. I'm not like a tech pro. I cannot promise you're going to see one article from me at 10 a.m. EST every single day, but whenever I can, I will be posting. So please do follow.
And she already has lots of articles that you all can read. So trust me, there's no scarcity there. I just wanted to say one more thing. In the African-American community, we have a tendency to, specifically in the church, we have a tendency to try to get the women specifically. Shh, be quiet, don't complain, just hush, just pray about it. And that is one thing that is so toxic and so unhealthy, and has trained these young Black girls and these, not just young, old, whatever, to not ever ask for help because they've been shut down. And I just want to say to you, if you have been experiencing that, don't take that anymore, because it's not good for you. Get the help you need in whatever spaces you need to get it. It may not be at the church you're at, if that's what they're doing, if that's how they're treating you. That's not healthy. It's just not healthy. And unfortunately, that's been the case for a lot of the Black American church leadership. They've dropped the ball on this, and it's caused mental health crisis that is showing up now in attendance. You'll hear all the statistics of Black church attendance falling. There's a reason for that. If you're not taking care of the women, we're the ones that run everything. Beyonce had it right. We run the world. We really do run the world. We run the churches. And if we're not showing up because people are mistreating us, this is where we're at now. So get help. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't deserve to be able to talk about what's going on or get the help that you need. That's abusive. Don't take that. Go get the help that you need. God bless you all. Thank you, Deya.
Thank you so much, Donna.
This was such a pleasure. It's been a pleasure meeting with you, talking with you, and I look forward to seeing what all you have coming up in your future. You're a fantastic speaker already, and you're just getting started. I can't even imagine.
Thank you so much, Donna. And I will be avidly waiting for the next episodes of your podcast. I already feel like I've planted some new seeds with you, and I'm so excited.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. Y'all have a great day now. Please go to PlantYourSeeds.show for the show notes for this and all the other episodes of Plant Your Seeds of Transformation.